Hey, everybody, and welcome to another social media office hours with my very special guest, Brian Solis. Brian is a marketing anthropologist, he describes himself, and I think he's correct. He may be the only one that does that. And Brian has written a new book, The X Experience, the experience when business meets design. And I have to tell you that this is a tour de force. I've read all of Brian's books, and this is his best work. I actually haven't finished this one because there's so many ideas in this that I found I needed to dwell on things for a long time to really try to think about it and really internalize what you're saying. Honestly, a few things in there I'm still trying to figure out and understand. So first of all, Brian, congratulations on really a fantastic book.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I mean, that means a lot coming from you. I have the highest of respect for you, and I've always considered you a good friend. So you're kind of making me blush over here. If my lighting was better, you'd be able to see it. Uh, but thanks for that, and I can't wait to tell you the backstory behind it. But I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well, I've got pages of questions here for you. And the first thing I'd like to do, it's a question I think that probably it's on a lot of people's mind, and maybe I think people might have been afraid to ask you this before, but your hair, it's magnificent. How do you keep it so thick and so shiny? I mean, look, it's magnificent, Brian.
It's probably just genetics. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Chris.
So let's get into the book. I don't want to waste any time because there's just so many things that we can talk about and cover here today, and I'm just so honored to be able to talk to you. If I had to summarize this book, it's really about this idea that you're viewing marketing, the next phase of marketing, as marketers are architects of human-centered experiences. You're looking at these little micro experiences that people have with brands and suggest that this is the new moment of truth. It's the moment of truth beyond the zero moment of truth. So talk a little bit about the core concepts. The book is filled with so many ideas, but what's the main path for this book?
Yeah, so the last book, which was What's the Future of Business, aka WTF, really broke down the customer journey into these four moments of truth. So starting with the zero moment of truth, where they go into the discovery phase, moving on to the first moment of truth, where they're about to make the decision. The second moment of truth is sort of the experience that they have when they start using, said product or service. And then what I introduced, which was the ultimate moment of truth, is that moment where that experience is shared, which then becomes the next person's zero moment of truth. And so you could just see by breaking down the journey into these four moments that you could, I don't want to say easily, but definitely much more realistically be able to track sort of what people are doing and to what extent and how, and what's important to them, so that you can then be in front of all of this decision making. So in that sort of discovery process that I was going through in writing the last book, I realized that the the magic was the experience that people have and that people share. And what just really surprised me was how very little companies think about what that experience should be, and then sort of architect them in ways that come to life in these moments of truth. So it's not just about, hey, we have great marketing, we've got great search, we've got great social, great customer service, great products. Those are all disparate things. But what if they were held to this experiential standard, so that there would be no question what somebody would feel in every one of those moments of truth, or what they would share when you're not around? So this book really is about the idea of introducing experiences, getting really to the basics of what an experience is, because it's more than a buzzword, and then how to design them so that we could kind of rethink the future of business and relationships.
Again, my mind was just turning and spinning as I was reading this book. I just, have so many ideas and so many questions. But one of the things that occurred to me, and I'd be interested in your perspective on this, as you start to suggest ways that marketers start to design these experiences. I like this idea of really thinking of yourself as the architect of the journey or the experiences they have along the journey. You talked about things like listening, being in the customer's shoes, having empathy for your customer. And it occurred to me, wow, this is marketing 101. These are the things I learned in college. These are the things I've been teaching in my marketing classes. So how much of this is really breakthrough thinking, and how much of this is applying kind of old school thinking to the new customer journey and all the options they have today?
Yeah. Hey, look, great question. The one thing about what you just sort of teed up there is, and it's very important for everybody to understand, is that this is the idea of getting into the mind and heart and shoes and just the overall perspective of your customer is not new, right? I mean, it's something that you've been preaching. Many smart folks have been passionately pleading to executives to really put the customer at the center of their universe. But it's just one of those things that's incredibly difficult. Also there's Joe Pine, who wrote a book called The Experience Economy in 1999 that
Yeah.
actually was pretty inspiring to me as well. So while the concepts aren't new, what hasn't really been done, I think, to what I try to do, which was break down what an experience is and how they're the constructs of the future of everything: brand, relationships, uh, customer lifetime value, customer satisfaction, things that I could show economically that would have an impact if you were to consider what experience design could and should be for a different generation of customers. So we sort of took all of these conversations that were taking place, all of these movements, all of these great ideas, and I tried to tie it behind something very compelling. So earlier you mentioned that I was a marketing anthropologist. So what I really am these days is I study digital's impact on business and society. That's about the best I can focus on, is looking at behavior, looking at expectations and values, and then I reverse engineer that in order to say, here's what to do in every facet of business, whether it's marketing, customer service, strategy, product development. And so what I had discovered over the span of the books that I had written was that indeed there was documented differences in customer behavior that was so profound that you had to literally re-engineer the customer journey, because they were hacking it. And this is why there's so much disruption today, where we see startups come out of nowhere and steal absolute market share from some of the incumbents simply because they're catering to the way people want to do business today, right? And that that was really the the core of the book. It was taking the importance of experiences and stripping it down to a human level so that you could meet this new customer because they're not you. And even though we get caught up in our day-to-day life, I'm saying, I think the saying is not in the book. I think it got cut, but the saying was, I tried to be innovative once and I got caught at meetings. And, we have
Eh,
we have our day-to-day life that makes it almost impossible for us to try new things or to make the case for new things. So that's what X was meant to do. It was meant to inspire you, to see people, to back you back up or take you back, and then bring you back in an entirely new way that I think hopefully makes the case.
Well, your discussion really tees up my next question very well. It's about the customer journey.
Hmm.
And I've been having some conversations with colleagues lately about, do we give up even trying to figure out what that is? I think a lot of people want to dream or envision that there's like this direct line between your ad or your tweet and a sale. And as a matter of fact, it's just this big jumble. I was talking to someone in the automotive industry, and they said that their research shows that on average, it's 9 months before someone visits a website and they make a sale? How do they make the decision in that 9 months? A lot of things happen in that 9 months. So I'd really love your perspective on, uh, is it possible? Is it practical to begin to plot a customer journey today? Or do you just, is the best you can hope for is kind of look at the big buckets that might get people there and try to engineer those experiences?
Yeah, you're what you're talking about right now is a huge movement in customer what's basically called CX, customer experience. Uh, my my book is called X, specifically. So I'll get to the answer, but I just kind of want to frame up where my mind is on this subject. The book is called X, not CX, not UX, not BX, because all of those things are important and they're big movements within the company today. But just the idea of what they all share, which is the letter X, which just stands for experience. That's where I think we need to get to a much more human conversation. And excuse me, the reason I say that is because, to your question, the customer journey is something that exists, right? And so does customer experience. People are going to have an experience whether we want them to or not, whether we designed it or not, and more so, they're going to have a journey. They're going to go on some type of journey. So a lot of research I've been doing with Google, of what they call micro moments. We've been able to validate the last book, WTF, with these 4 moments of truth, but we've also been able to document that the customer journey is radically different, and it's getting radically different every single day, simply because, most of the time people start their customer journey with this phone, right? It's the device near them. And when you think about what plays out on this today, well, it's essentially hopping through a bunch of bolted on and duct tape things of technology over the last 20 years that doesn't match the expectations of somebody who's a digital native or who lives an active digital lifestyle. So, to your point around the automotive uh, question or example, what what is a website in 2016, right? Because it's certainly not a lot different than what we set out back in the 90s to do, right? It's just a
Mm-hmm.
digital brochure because we think that that's how somebody wants to browse, but it's not, right? In these micro moments, we've learned that 90% of people uh, go into these moments without any brand affinity or loyalty, right? They're just looking for the company that engages them their way, which is why we're starting to see the foundation for disruption happen more and more these days.
Mm-hmm.
So, the simple answer to your question is we absolutely have to rethink what the customer journey is, because if we don't, then we give people an excuse to go elsewhere, right? I call customers today, especially digital customers, accidental narcissists. Every app and every service that they use, like from Uber to Instacart to Tinder, uh, they're being conditioned to know that the world revolves around them, right? If you want a tamale, there's an app for that, right? It'll take 45 minutes and you'll have it wherever you are. And so they're starting to expect businesses to cater to them this way. Yet businesses are still stuck in things like, hey, we have to scale our contact centers. We have to make our website responsive. They're not necessarily thinking about, well, what's that human journey? What should it be, and how could we engineer it so that it
Mm-hmm.
delivers this experience that we've defined? And
Mm-hmm.
this is where every one of us, you included, right, and me, have to go back inside the organization from an empathetic point of view to say our whole journey as it exists today is no longer good enough, right? It's just a bunch of paths that we put out there, and I liken it to the like the old ketchup bottles, right? So, we just took them for granted. We never questioned, like, why do we have to fight these ketchup bottles to get, have techniques, hold it at a 45-degree angle, smack it on the palm of your hand, get a knife, and now we have gravity plastic bottles that, you could just squish and ketchup comes out, because that's the objective of somebody who wants to do something their way, right? And the same is true for the customer journey. Phones, social, apps, all of these things are a gift to us to re-engineer a customer journey that people want, because if we don't, they'll get it elsewhere.
I can really empathize with especially small businesses. I'm a small business, and the last 10 or 12 people that have hired me or inquired about a speaking engagement, I asked them, well, how did you find me? How did you hear about me? And it's 10 or 12 different answers. Just like, wow, where do you even begin to chart this path? And I know you work with a lot of big companies, a lot of global brands. Is there any progress being made as far as smart URLs or technology that's helping to plot these complicated paths?
Well, one of my favorite examples is Sephora.
Hmm.
And this is because Bridget Dolan over there over the years has sort of taken an empathetic perspective, which is, and it's real. It's I don't want to overuse the term empathy, but it's probably the most important ingredient in the example I'm about to give you, and also every successful example. And that is, we tend to be more sympathetic as strategists, right? Because we can't really put ourselves in the shoes of our customers, because just a lot of psychological reasons, right? Cognitive bias being one of them, or validation bias being another. And there's an old saying that we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are, right? Which automatically gets in our way of trying to design things that are much more native and intuitive to today's or tomorrow's customers. So what Bridget Dolan did was she was empathetic, and she studied her customers in every aspect of what they're trying to do, not just how they do it, but what are they really trying to do? And also aspirationally, how could Sephora and what it represents and what it sells sort of enable those aspirations? As a result, she was able to uncover so many facets of the customer journey that today, if you think about it, are just run by different groups. And when that happens, you by default get disparate experiences, right? And maybe not all of them are good, but if you think about what experience is, it's not any one thing, it's everything. And the measurement of that is the sum of all of those parts. So she created essentially an entirely new organization within the company that brought all of these groups together so that they could work
Hmm.
towards this new standard.
Wow.
And that was so phenomenally for her that led to the creation of an innovation center in South San Francisco. And you think about it, Sephora, a beauty retailer, having an innovation center in Silicon Valley. It's tremendous, and the reason they did that is because they need to stay closer to technology, and two, they need to stay closer to the digital customer in real time so that they can test and optimize all of this stuff every single day. So what you're starting to see now is the re-engineering of business from the inside out in order to compete with this digital customer. Because if not, there's going to be the Uber of whatever it is that's going to come out of nowhere and take them on. And one last example, since you brought up automotive earlier, is the folks over at General Motors are really really grabbing my attention these days with what they're doing around what they call the Global Connected Customer Experience Group. It's a new organization inside of GM
Wow.
that is bringing all of these things together. That started with OnStar, but also that is connecting what used to be the traditional contact center, social, customer experience work, and it's creating a new department to essentially change how GM talks to customers, manages relationships, and here's the cool part: uh, builds better products, better cars over time, and
Mhm.
that's really what this is about.
Mhm. That's awesome. I saw an article the other day. Your comment prompted something. It was basically said something about well, social media marketing is a myth. It doesn't work. You can't prove the ROI. And I'm thinking you would disagree with that. I'm guessing that this is a touch point. It is one of these customer experiences that plays into the role somewhere.
Well, yes, absolutely. I see that all the time, whether it's mobile, whether it's social, what have you. What's the ROI? I think there's a lot you get out of anything of what you put into it, right? And I think part of the problem is that what we tend to do with social or anything new is bring to bear this old way of doing things, right? That we hold as sort of the mechanical or the operational standards for, hey, here's a new platform, a democratic platform of people sharing experiences with one another. Let's create an infographic and blast it to everybody because that's how we talk to people. And I know how to have a conversation. We'll put together an editorial calendar where we do infographics and viral videos, and that's us joining. That's just joining the community. So it's it's just a philosophical approach. You can't do anything new if you don't actually do something new. And this is why experience is, I think, so important because it forces you to really get inside someone and to to see what they feel, to inspire you, to inspire them to feel differently. And that's all an experience is. It's an emotional reaction to a moment, right? And those moments add up. And I think about the ROI where, and this is something you and I have talked about years ago,
Mhm.
where the I in ROI could also stand for ignorance, right? What's the return of not doing something new and
Yeah,
different?
right.
And the answer,
I use examples of my class where companies decided not to go digital and they're not around anymore. And I end the section often in my classes and my speeches with what's the ROI of bankrupt? Sometimes it's not about ROI. Sometimes it's you got to start with relevance. Are
yes.
you going to be here tomorrow? So, well, I'm aware of the time, and we've got time for maybe one or two more questions. And I wanted to ask you something. This book is also really visually stunning, and you put a lot in it, just an incredible. You must have been just exhausted when you finished this book. And something I had in my mind when I saw you last year at South by Southwest, you hinted that you were working on something very, very special. I know this has actually been years in the making. And I said to you, I'll never forget the look on your face. I said, because I had just finished my book at that point, the content code, just launched it right before South by Southwest. And I was just really not just psychologically exhausted, but almost physically exhausted. And I mentioned this to you, and you kind of had a deep sigh, and you said, "It's the hardest work I do." So tell me a little bit about the effort and the if you just look through here the integration with just the stunning graphics, just the size of the book and everything. It's really an experience in and of itself. So, and you mentioned, and I think you mentioned in the book that this actually took you years to write. You'd started this years ago and and postponed it until the time was right. So tell a little bit about your journey to create something like this.
Wow, man, what a setup. Thanks, Mark. This is yeah, this is a real personal story because I actually started X before WTF,
Yeah.
and that's why you saw WTF sort of when it did come out, it looked different. There was some design elements that I had already started to experiment with, just as a proof point to get back to X. The hardest parts of X were the design and then also the humanization of the point of the book,
Hmm.
which to it's not easy to make something so difficult easy.
Hmm.
And I wanted this book to be approachable by everybody. So when I finished the book, I found it incredibly ironic that I was telling you that customers were changing, that you needed to change, that you needed to design these experiences that were going to be more relevant to them, and here I was telling you that in a book. So I thought, why don't I read the book as if I were the person I was trying to reach, and go through sort of what would life look like that way. And I got to tell you that um, I was completely moved to rethink the book. That's why it took so long. So I ended up rewriting it with this idea that now that I know that experience is sort of the standard, and I want you to feel something, and I want you to see how people are different. How could I bring that to life in a way that was going to be inspiring, but also instructional? So so you could tactily hold this thing, um, and feel it at the same time. So I studied exactly what I'm asking you to do, which is digital behavior, expectations, values, and things like attention spans, and how people learn, how people are inspired, how they take action, uh, and I looked at, well, why would I have to just use the book format? Why couldn't I just start from scratch? If I could reinvent the book to be relevant to, say, a teenager in high school, if I could rethink what a textbook could be, what would it be? And so I literally started from scratch with my friends at Mechanism, who were very patient and also very creative in helping us think through all of this, and also, props to Wiley for essentially giving me the which is crazy. Hey, Wiley, I don't want to do a book. Can you give me creative license to rethink what a book shape and paper and all of this stuff could be, and let's find a new supply chain to build it at the same time. I mean, thankfully they were very supportive, but the the book is an analog app. You'll notice that there's no table of contents. You'll see that there's no traditional chapters. Everything's
Mhm.
broken into thoughtful segments, so that you could navigate your way
Yeah,
left to
this is
right.
chamber table of contents 2.0.
Yeah, it's meant to emulate your home screen,
Yeah,
so that
yeah,
you can go where exactly you need to go. The shape of a book is an iPad Air when it's closed, so that there's some familiarity around sort of the tablet, and then just I even had to learn how to rewrite sentences,
yeah.
so that they could be much more engaging and stimulating to keep you sort of going through the book in ways that weren't feeling inundated. Now, look, it's also a very complicated book. The subject matter isn't easy because we're talking about designing experiences, but I think that the design and the format of the flow, and hopefully, look, this is just a fraction of what I wanted to do with it. We had to stop because we missed so many deadlines because I got a little mad in the process of trying to, let's try this and let's do this and all of these insights. So it was, I'll tell you, honestly, it was debilitating because it's not easy to reimagine something, but at the same time, though, I'm not asking you to do anything that I didn't do myself. So
Mhm.
hopefully you find it to be special and engaging, and hopefully inspiring too.
Well, it's great, and again, congratulations on just an amazing effort. As I was looking through this, I was just really filled with admiration of the work that went into it, because there's not too many people that can pull off a book that has original thinking. You know, I hesitate to call it a chapter, but section after section after section. I mean, there's something new. It's not just reporting research. You're teasing insights and connecting dots. So really, it's great. I hope everyone will get a copy of the book. It's one of the most fascinating books I've read in a couple of years. So great job, and thanks for being with me today, Brian.
Mark, thank you so much, and thanks for being a great friend, and thank you everybody for listening along with us. And let me know if you need anything. I'm at Brian Solis on all of those platforms, and hope you like the book. Hope it helps you.
Is there a website for the book?
Oh yeah, I guess that would help. Xthebook.com, or it's at Amazon. And if I highly recommend that you not download an electronic version. The print is the point of the book.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Brian Solis, and thanks everyone for joining me